Good morning. It's Jim Norris from Backstage Insider. Today, on this sort of sunny day, I've got Mike Bruce with me. It's kind of hard for me to describe his job description because it's so varied, but that'll certainly come out as we talk. What would you call yourself nowadays, Mike?
I guess probably the best way to describe it is just like a entertainment industry entrepreneur. I've kind of I've done such a wide range of jobs and pursuits that yeah, it's kind of hard to nail it down. So I think that's kind of the way I like to describe it is just a entertainment industry and entrepreneur.
Sure. And I think nowadays, especially after the pandemic, that kind of thing is not unusual that people learn that in a lot of cases it was a good idea to be doing more than one thing. And also
Yeah.
it's just enjoyable as well to be not just focused on one thing, which I think is good. So going back to the beginning of time when you first started in the entertainment industry, how did that get started? Were you a musician originally? Because I noticed that was in your job description somewhere.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town out by Peterborough, a place called Campbellford, and,
Right.
I found music at a very early age. My birth father was a musician and, a lot of music around me sort of thing, and I just kind of, naturally, you know, uh progressed towards becoming a musician and just music is like so many other people, music is my life. I've always got music on, and so I started a band with some high school buddies, and eventually that turned into a gigging band. And one of the guys that we had in our band was from Mississauga, and he came down and joined our band and convinced us to move to the city because growing up in a small town, not so many opportunities. So I essentially moved to the city to be a rock star. And when I got here, I quickly realized that it was probably a good idea that I figure out how to make some money. And a musician friend of mine suggested becoming an extra in movies and TV. And they'd feed you $7 an hour and feed you peanut butter and jam sandwiches, and I thought I'd made it. Yeah. so so that's kind of how it all started. And then just as I got into it all, I realized that it was really a good place for kind of the misfits and miscreants that can't really deal with office life, and maybe have a bit more of an adventurous spirit, I guess. But yeah, that's how I kind of found my way in.
That's excellent. I'm actually doing a webinar for Sing Toronto next week on basically on multiple streams of income, I guess I could call it, was something that we
Uh,
promoted during the pandemic because the big pandemic problem for musicians was they only had one stream of income. Before that,
yeah,
they played in clubs for not a lot of money, 5 nights a week or 6 nights a week or whatever it was. Of course,
yeah,
when the pandemic hit, that was the end of that. So,
yeah.
a lot of them have diversified, which is a good thing. And also there's a lot of potential, as you found. Film was one which is huge industry. I mean, it makes the music industry look kind of small in a lot of ways. Uh, and the only thing that's actually bigger, I guess, the games industry is still really crazy, crazy big. Um,
Yeah.
but they're all interrelated. So when you said you moved to the big city, did that mean Toronto?
No, it's funny. I've never actually lived in Toronto. I moved to Mississauga. I apologize, my allergies are really acting up today, but
No problem.
um, I took the pill. It hasn't worked yet, but so yeah. So I moved to Mississauga, met my wife there, and just kind of stayed in Mississauga, but Streetsville in particular,
Right.
for quite a while, and then once we started having kids, we moved to Milton, and I've been here ever since. But a lot of my work, through film, took me to Hamilton, filming on location and that sort of thing. And that's how we kind of, that's how I fell in love with Hamilton. I started, shooting here as a locations PA, back in 99, 2000. So over the last, 26 years, I've really kind of gotten to know the city. And honestly, if I didn't love my the place I lived right now, I would absolutely live in Hamilton. I really like this city, but
Yeah, it's underrated, I guess. The problem is when you drive by it or even through it in some cases, you end up in the what was Stelco, of course, that area of town, which is far from being pretty. But when
yeah,
there's a lot of beautiful areas in the city, and
yeah,
one is at the very back of the harbor. When you go through there on the train, that's actually incredibly beautiful area there. When you go over that bridge and you see the back end of the harbor, it's so different from what you see from the QEW. And then, of course, the other, the film industry, the arts industry, there's always been a lot of music in Hamilton. It's always been
yeah.
a big center. So, a location PA, can you just explain to us what that is exactly?
Well, so when you ultimately, and now I'm a location manager. I moved up, but yeah, basically the locations department is the department that's responsible for, working with the producers and the production designer and director, and any other creatives, kind of figuring out what the look of the show is, and then going out into the real world and trying to find locations that match that aesthetic and feel. And once you've done the scouting process and you've found the perfect location, or as close to the perfect location as you can, then it's our job to get do all the permitting, all the logistics, finding parking, lunchrooms for crew, talking to all the stores, doing, negotiating contracts with homeowners and businesses. And it's really just it's a logistics job. It's a mix of like logistics, kind of real estate agent type stuff, but also a good mix of creative in there as well. So it's a very well rounded department. And it's good for, again, for people who have a little bit more adventure and want to get out, and just see different things. And it's always an adventure, that's for sure.
And you still do that work as well in addition to all the other parts of your life?
From time to time, I do, yeah, yeah. The idea was, I kind of left, being a permanent location manager, we opened a film studio here in Hamilton.
Right.
And that was kind of the idea that that would take over. And but I'm part of the Directors Guild of Canada, and so I like to keep up my dues, and I do like the job. So when it does pop up from time to time, I do enjoy getting out scouting. And the last show I actually did was the Mr. Beast Game season 1 that shot in Toronto. And
Oh, yeah.
that was, yeah, that was something that kinda shook my head up a bit. And it was quite the beast, no pun intended. So, yeah.
So what were the challenges with that one?
Uh, we've just never seen such a massively scaled production ever in this country. I mean, it was, like, I think the overall budget ended up being, $120 million for a reality show. And
Oh,
it was the most amount of, like, at one point, like, I swear we had over 1,000 crew on it. And plus there was 1,000 contestants. Like, I don't know if you know the show at all, but it was just,
not it.
they broke all kinds of records just for, the most cameras ever used, and it was just the sets they did was amazing. But because it was reality, you're not dealing with, okay, do a take. Okay, now you've done that take. That's a minute, and now you sit around and analyze it, and do another take or not, or move on. Where this is just like it's 24 hours, just go. So you're always just scrambling to kind of keep up. But it was an amazing experience, and I would absolutely do it again.
And how many locations did they actually use?
Well, it's funny, they didn't have a lot of, locations. That was more studio based. But, so they were up at, Downsview in the old Bombardier, plant. So we had 6 hangars which were 75,000 square feet each. And then, again, if you've seen the show, they built like the city, the Beast Game City, at the end of the runway, and that was a 300,000 square foot,
Wow.
outdoor kind of, yeah, it was incredible. And then, we had there's a train, game where they, smash cars with a train.
Oh,
So we did that down, down in Waynfleet. But yeah, it was pretty. Other than that, I mean, all the locations were kind of all there, but just massive, massive logistic, lots of planning.
I notice, on, when I watch movies or even TV shows, I always go into IMDb and just go down to where the locations are because I always find that interesting, where things are actually, filmed
Yeah,
and obviously for all of those, there's somebody like you who's figuring that out because some of the big movies and shows, they're filmed in a crazy number of places, and
yeah,
even though they might be set in a Caribbean country, they might be actually filmed in the Mediterranean somewhere or
yeah.
in Bosnia or who knows, like, some of them are just when you look at it, it's like, "Whoa, that's hard to believe."
Yeah,
And
it's movie magic.
yeah, and then a lot of it in actual studios somewhere,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
it's funny too, that with the Beast Games, the Hamilton connection there is part of what I do is, I'll manage properties for people who want to, capture revenue from, film and television. So I'll kind of broker that and, uh, be there to kind of protect them, but also facilitate the film industry to film in locations that, weren't, necessarily, that accessible. And one of the locations that I rep is Stelco,
wow.
and so originally the Beast Games wanted to build their set at Stelco. They were looking there, and then just through that, got to know the producer, and so when they decided to move to, Downsview, he asked if I could come and help them out, and I ended up staying for the show. But that's the Hamilton connection for them.
Oh, okay. So in general, what makes if let's say a production company from the States is looking at location, what makes Hamilton appealing compared to all the other choices they have in the world, I guess? You're competing with everywhere.
Well, yeah, so I mean, there is the proximity to Toronto, which is great because, as we know, Toronto is a great film center, and then you're 45 minutes down the road to almost any kind of look that you need. Like, you can have the post-apocalyptic wasteland, you can have the beautiful, wine country. There's the escarpment. There's, like, beautiful areas with massive houses, but there's also, down areas with when you're doing the more gritty kind of look. So really, the only thing you really can't find here is like the large strips of massive sky rises. But other than that, it's like you have everything else you need here, and people are just really film friendly here, and um, we try not to burn locations or overstay our welcome, but, typically, things could be a little cheaper. Just there's more places to park. There's just so many reasons that you would come to Hamilton, and then, of course, for domestic production, there's a 10% regional bonus tax credit that they get if they film outside of a certain zone. So once you're in Hamilton or other jurisdictions kind of around this bubble that's been created, then you get an extra. It's called a regional bonus. So if you film most of your location days, outside of the zone, then you get an extra bump in tax credits.
I see. Okay, that's
Yeah.
so the original company that you started, tell us about that. Your first
Which one?
I read about 2, I guess one was is the actual film studio, and then the other's, I guess, a production company.
Okay, well, so I mean, I have a film studio with some partners in Etobicoke called Studio 550,
Right,
at Evans Avenue, 550 Evans Avenue, and then about 8 years ago, we started an effort to open a film studio in Hamilton, and that's the Eon Studio Group.
right.
So we ran that for a while, and it's, studios. The studio game has been kind of challenging as of late. There was a big strike a couple of years ago, and just with the change in the market and the world becoming more competitive, we've actually kind of closed it down for now, and we're renting it out to other film companies and that sort of thing that are still doing things. But that's kind of on hold for now, and hopefully we can bring it back, as the industry comes back. But yeah, so that's the Eon Studio Group, and then obviously Grant Avenue Studio, the music studio, is another one, and
So how did the, purchase of Grant Avenue Studio come about?
through film. It was a friend of mine, partner, a business partner. He had ties to this place. He knew this place, and after the pandemic, as you said, like people were looking for whatever revenue they could take in, and being somebody who brokers locations for film, he asked me if I could meet with them and try and bring film here to just to help them out revenue wise, and of course being a musician, yeah, I've always known about Grant Avenue and Daniel Lanois, and like just it was a real treat for me. He's like, you got to go by and meet them, and I was like, "You go hang out at Grant Avenue?" "Yeah, yes, please." Like, that's amazing. I've never been here before, and so I came and met with Bob Deutsch and Amy King, and just talked a little bit about that. The bringing revenue, and just through conversation, it just came to be that Bob, who was the owner at the time, Bob Deutsch. He was looking to wind down and getting up there, and we didn't want to see this turn into apartments, and he had reached out to a few other people, and there wasn't a great deal of interest, just because buying a music studio in 2023 is not necessarily the best investment. But I guess being the iconic place that it is, and having the history that it is, and it just very quickly turned into a real conversation. And I called a few people that partnered up with me. My buddy Marco from DC Music in Toronto, and our head engineer Andrew Lozon, and of course my wife, and also business partner in Grant Avenue. We discussed it all, and decided that it was a probably a very cool thing to do. And my son Tyler is also one of our engineers. Just so happened at the same time he's been into music and music production, and wanted to go to school for engineering, and so it just made sense that if we're gonna spend money to send him to school, why not buy Grant Avenue Studio, and this could be his school basically. So it was just perfect timing, and just the right people said yes. And it's funny, like, throughout life, I've always seen these iconic places, that you always hear, oh, this place is closing down, and nobody's going to save it, and it's too bad it's been around for 100 years, and everybody gets sad. And I always thought, like, if I ever had the opportunity, like, I'd love to be able to try and be the one to save it, sort of thing. But of course it just never came up. But then when Grant Avenue came up, it just again, it was perfect timing, and it's something that really speaks to me and my family, and my other partners. And so it was just one of those moments where it's like, okay, yeah, we can save this piece of Hamilton, well, global music history, and fulfill a need ourselves, and give my son Tyler a proper training experience in a real studio. And just for all those reasons, that's how it kind of came about.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going way, way back to the early days when I was publishing Canadian Musician. I used to deal with his name was Dan Lanois in those days. He wasn't that was before he became Daniel, but he used to buy
Right.
advertising, for Grant Avenue and Canadian Musician magazine, so I knew him way before he became an artist and a producer.
Right.
And of course, he's gone on to incredible success in both those areas, which
Oh
which is
yeah.
which is great to see. So what do you think now is your, in marketing, they call it the USP, unique selling proposition. What do you think that is for Grant Avenue now from a practical point of view in the marketplace? What do you think your advantage is if somebody somewhere in the world is going to do an album? Wh how
Yeah.
how do you compete with Toronto, New York, Los Angeles, Nashville, all these other places where, um, at the upper level, I guess those artists have the choice of going wherever they want.
Yeah. Well, I think I talk about this quite often with other studio owners and just musicians in general, and the way we look at it is, you have to, as an artist, you have to feel comfortable. You have to be comfortable where you're going. You have to go to a place that's nurturing and can really allow you to just let it flow and get the best of what you're trying to accomplish out of it, sort of thing. So, because every studio is different, the people that work there are different. It's like, I think what's unique about Grant Avenue is that, it's got that history. So it's a place where you come in and you feel it. Like there's so much here that's still kind of original to what it was in 1976. So it's a very warm environment. It's the sound qualities of the live room, I think are on par with any other studio. And it's in a house. It's in an old Edwardian house, like tucked in the middle of a neighborhood with like trees around it. So it's just a very comforting environment. And then we still have all the old analog gear that Daniel Awad brought in, and Brian Eno worked on, and David Bottrell worked on, and all the different artists over the years that came in like worked on it. Plus, we've added all the modern workstations like Pro Tools and Cubase and all that. We have an array of instruments and amps that are hard to come across. They're just rare and vintage, and so just the offering really is the environment and the people, and the product has to speak for itself. You know what I mean? So, but listen, I mean Hamilton, I'll tell you, like it's a hotbed of talent, and there are so many great studios here, and everybody's doing good work, and everybody's got something a little different. Like Catherine North has a big church, so that's a big wide open space, but another great environment with some really cool people. Halo is in a big, an older building, but a little bit more modern, and then Threshold, Studio 410. There's a bunch of people that are all doing really good work, and so I think really Hamilton is unique. Um, where it's grown into this like artistic creative center that has this deep, 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 rich history of creativity and like just the level of talent here is constantly blowing us away. It's almost too much sometimes. Like there's so much that you want to stay on top of it all, but you just can't. So it's good, and there's enough. It feeds us all. So like there's enough to go around. Like I always like to say, like, nobody's getting rich right now, but we're all being very enriched by what's happening in this part of the world.
I think that your main selling point, I guess, is the comfort level for the artist. I think is really important. I was a musician in a previous life, and we always found that going into the studio in general was an uncomfortable proposition. It didn't feel
Yeah.
natural. The people in many cases didn't make it very comfortable. And we did I was in a band called Sea Dog years ago, and we did our second album in New York City. And I was a drummer, and one big problem in those days was a lot of the engineers in Toronto, they playing the drums, they just made you feel so uncomfortable. But this engineer, in New York, I don't remember his name, but he'd done like the original Neil Sedaka, and
Wow.
his whole thing is that, I'm really good at capturing good sounds, and I just asked him, "What do I need to do?" And he said, "You play, I record." He said, "You play the way you want. I don't care. If you wanna play loud, I'm good with that. If you wanna play quiet, I'm good with that." And I thought, "Whoa, this is crazy." Here we are in New York, which is kind of an uncomfortable city, but
Yeah.
way more comfortable experience because of this guy, because of his attitude. Whereas in Toronto, I found a lot of them, and that's not a generalization, but some of the people we work with, it just made it uncomfortable that you were tense the whole time you were recording. that the clock was ticking and that you had to do things a certain way. So I think,
Yeah.
you mentioning that as number 1 is such a big factor that, what it feels like and looks like and the people, how they make you feel, I think is super important, and it ends up being reflected in the music.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I've also experienced I call it the engineer sigh, where it's like, "Can we do one more take?" And they just go,
Yeah,
like, they just and it can be a grind, like, you get all these, after so many years of, indie bands and, like, artists and stuff, like, it can be a grind, so it is, really tough to stay, positive and keep that environment going, but I think it's, like, that's paramount to success in art is just, the comfort level of the artist, and, tense situations can also, spawn some pretty great art, but, for the most part, yeah, like, just if you're always watching, looking at your watch and just kind of, half listening or what, like, just what's that gonna do for anybody, you know what I mean? Like, they're just gonna go somewhere else
yeah.
if they're releasing, product that isn't great because they didn't have a great experience, but they gotta get it out there, like, you do you want your name on that? And, but it's, yeah, like, again, because nobody's, like, again, getting rich off this stuff, it's like there's no kind of there's no real greed happening, I guess is the best way to put it. It's like I think a lot of people kinda share that philosophy in Hamilton as well.
Right.
Um, just because, if you create that environment, people just they wanna come, and so, you'll make your rent or you'll pay your bills, don't worry about it, just, like, do good work, you know?
Well, it's certainly that part of your business is definitely a labor of love, like you say, you're not gonna become, um, you know, Jeff Bezos or something running a studio, but it is a labor of love for sure, and when you do get, a hit or something that does really well for the artist, and, when I was an artist, one of the biggest deals was just hearing a song on the radio. It was especially the first time, it was just such a thrill to, you know,
Yeah.
something that you created from nothing and took it through the whole process, and there it is, people are at least hundreds are listening to it anyway, which is
Yeah.
so with your busy life, because obviously you've got a lot of things going on, how do you, balance your personal life, or do you even have a personal life?
It's, life is just constant, battle for that exact thing, like I'm, me and my wife joke all the time, Debbie, we go on vacation. I say, I want to go sit on a beach somewhere and just not do anything and relax. And she's like, who are you kidding? Like after an hour, you'll be up, zip lining or whatever. Like I just, I have a very active kind of spirit, I guess. You know what I mean? And so finding that balance is it's always a challenge. And I'm very fortunate to have a great family that keeps me grounded and we support each other. She's got a lot of things on the go, and now my kids are older and they've got a lot of things on the go. So we all just kind of give each other, support and reminders that there's sometimes there's more important things in life than business or whatever the case is. So it's yeah, trying to find that balance, and also it's funny coming to Grant Avenue. It's also and again with my son as well. Like it's reinvigorated my drive to write music and get back to being creative and I have this wonderful opportunity to just be in an environment where, that I've always dreamed of. So, I'm really starting to take advantage of that. Me and my son are working on some music together. He just, he's got a new single and getting mastered right now. He's a musician and, I know I'm his dad, but I think it's fantastic, and, one of the things that I really love, that we, at Grant Avenue, when we opened it up, we wanted to kind of get it, be more community minded as well, and really use the platform to help people, help artists and stuff. And so a few years ago, we partnered up with Supercrawl Sonic Onion. We do a Grant Avenue studio stage at Supercrawl every year, which is a massive arts festival every September. They close down, 5 city blocks of Hamilton, and it's a big arts market, and then with a couple of big stages at either end, and then we started doing we call it an artist competition series called the Road to Supercrawl, and we get a bunch of local artists. We had over 300 submissions this year, and we
Well,
whittle it down to 25 artists, and then one winner. Gets the overall winner gets a spot on the main stage at Supercrawl, and we give them a Grant Avenue recording package and a video, and that sort of thing. And so last year's winner, this Irish Canadian singer, artist Aoife, Aoife, she was the winner, and so we just finalized her single that we recorded for her. So I that's going to be released, I imagine, imminently, and we're all super super excited about that as well. So it's those kind of things that are really fulfilling. So even though it's part of the job, we really enjoy it, and it's something we can do as a family, and it's something we can do, in the community, and we love live music, we love music in general, so it's just, that's finding things that, in our work life that are also very fulfilling is I think really important for keeping life balanced as well.
for sure, and the fact that your entire family really is involved in I think helps a lot.
Yes.
It kinda means it's hard to turn it off, but on the other hand, you understand each other, whereas in some families, if somebody's off traveling the world and then the rest of the family is sitting at home doing nothing, that makes for a tough family life, but in your case, everybody's involved and passionate about music and what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, I mean, family is family, but it's, overall, it's very fulfilling, and, we always kinda said if it ever gets to a point where it is more of a hindrance, or a not a hindrance, but if it just becomes, so not so fulfilling, or whatever the case is, then we'd rethink our lives, basically, so without getting into, like, marriage counseling and all that stuff, but
Well, I think that there's a lesson there as well that a lot of people should learn is that you can rethink your life no matter what you're doing. You can, wake up the next day and say, "Okay, I want to change this. I want things to be more successful and more fulfilling and more fun is part of it
yeah.
as well." So as far as plans for the future for your various companies, any other aside for what you talked to, anything exciting coming up?
Well, really, I mean, we're just, we're focusing on Grant this year. It's the 50th anniversary.
Right.
So we've just started the Road to Supercrawl, second annual Road to Supercrawl. Our first night was last week, and night two is next Wednesday. And we're just, we're planning some celebrations for the 50th anniversary of Grant. We do a YouTube series called Grant Avenue Studio Presents. Very much in the same concept as like NPR Tiny Desks, where we bring artists in and they do 3 or 4 songs, and we do a little interview and cut it into an episode. And so just really, this year is very music centric, and just really focused on celebrating the 50th anniversary, and being creative, and being community driven, and that sort of thing. And then that one of the other things that I should mention, I'm also on the newly formed Hamilton Film Board, and we're doing a lot to try and drive the message home that Hamilton is still a really viable filming city, and just promoting Hamilton, from the film side of things. So we're kind of covering the entirety of the creative arts in Hamilton.
Excellent. So, lastly, I guess, if you, could give some advice to somebody coming up in as a entertainment entrepreneur, what would it be?
Stay open-minded. Don't close your mind to any opportunity. You know, one of the one of the things that I always used to hear from a guy that I worked with, in the industry, you know, he would say things like, "Always say yes until you have to say no," or, you know, it's like, you know, you don't be so stubborn and, like, have a focus, but don't be so stubborn to not see that, you know, this opportunity that's come up is actually a path to that thing that you want, but it's not because it's not the thing that you think it should be. You close your mind to it, and quite often people miss out on their opportunities, their big breaks because they're too narrow, you know, narrow in their thinking. So just, you know, don't be afraid to quit that job if it's not speaking to you. Don't be afraid to, you know, just go out into the world and explore. You know, like that's the biggest thing is just really soak it all in. Like, you know, life is for the living, and you know, you got to get out there and live life. I mean, that'll feed anything you do. Like anything you do in life, you'll learn something, you'll soak something in, and eventually it just becomes the totality of who you are. And so whatever, you know, whatever effort you end up kind of landing on, you know, you have all that experience to draw on, and so just get out and experience life.
That for sure, that's great advice, and the concept of always saying yes, I think, has come up in a lot of these interviews that I've done. The one that stands out is Fred Mullen, the producer-songwriter, and that he said that's one thing that he learned. If something came along and it seemed like a good opportunity, just say yes, and then figure out afterwards how to do it, even though you don't
100%.
really know how to do it. You just say, "Okay, I'll do that." And
Yeah.
then you sit down and say, "Okay, one that comes to mind is Bob Ezrin going way back when he started, as he ended up producing Alice Cooper, and he just said, "I didn't know what the hell I was doing."
Yeah.
But I said, "Of course, I'll do that," and, it turned to be huge for him. So thanks
Yeah.
a lot, Mike. I really, appreciate, your time today, and all the best in all your endeavors, and, especially with Grant Avenue Studio. And I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you and great chat, and thanks for having me on.
Take care.
All right.